She had never spoken a single word in her life, not when she cried as a baby, not when she grew old enough to understand the world around her, and not even when the world judged her in silence. And on that quiet morning, standing near the sidewalk in her soft pink dress, she looked at the man everyone ignored, the man in the orange uniform holding a trash bag, and somehow, something inside her felt different, like a tiny spark had just been lit for the first time, because all her life she had been surrounded by the best doctors, the finest therapists, the most expensive care money could buy, and yet nothing had ever reached her, nothing had ever unlocked her voice, and her mother, a powerful and well-known millionaire, had slowly stopped believing it would ever happen. She had stopped hoping, replacing love with control, patience with frustration, and kindness with cold expectations, because in her world, everything had a solution, everything could be fixed with enough power, except this, except her own daughter, and the truth had made her distant, almost ashamed, hiding the child behind tall gates and perfect images, never allowing anyone to see the silence that lived inside her home. And that morning was no different. The mother stood a few steps away, speaking sharply on her phone, her voice firm, her tone impatient, her eyes barely noticing the small girl who stood quietly near the edge of the driveway. Because for her, the child had become a problem that refused to be solved, not a heart that needed to be understood. And then there was him. A single father, a garbage collector, a man who woke up before sunrise every day, working long hours just to provide for his own little girl, who waited for him at home with simple joys and tired smiles. And life had not been easy for him. He had faced loss, judgment, and long days filled with exhaustion, but he never allowed bitterness to take root in his heart. He carried kindness like it was the only thing he truly owned, and when he saw the silent girl watching him, he didn't look away like others did. He didn't feel uncomfortable or unsure. He simply smiled, a warm, genuine smile, the kind that expects nothing in return, and he crouched down slightly, keeping a respectful distance, as if he understood without being told that she needed space, and he said softly, "Hey there, it's okay, you don't have to say anything." And those words were simple, almost ordinary, but something in his voice was different. It was calm, it was patient, it didn't demand, it didn't expect, it just existed. And the girl blinked slowly, her eyes fixed on him, as if trying to understand something new, something unfamiliar, because for the first time, someone wasn't trying to fix her, wasn't trying to force her into speaking, wasn't looking at her like she was broken. And behind them, her mother glanced over briefly, her expression tightening as she noticed the interaction, and she walked forward quickly, her heels sharp against the pavement, her presence commanding, and she said firmly, "Please don't talk to her. You don't understand her condition," her tone carrying authority, dismissal, and a quiet sense of superiority, as if his presence alone was inappropriate. And he stood up slowly, not offended, not angry, just calm, and he nodded respectfully. "I understand more than you think," he replied gently, but she had already turned away, uninterested, pulling her daughter's hand slightly, trying to lead her back inside, and the girl followed, as she always did, quietly, without resistance. But something had changed, something small but real, because later that day, when she sat alone in her large, silent room, she remembered his voice, not the words exactly, but the feeling behind them, the patience, the acceptance, and it stayed with her, like a soft echo that refused to fade. And the next morning, when the sound of the garbage truck returned, she found herself standing by the window, watching, waiting, and when he appeared again, she stepped outside slowly, her small feet careful, her eyes searching for him. And when he saw her, his smile returned, just as warm, just as genuine, and this time, he didn't say much. He simply sat on the curb, picking up a small stick and drawing simple shapes on the ground, circles, lines, little figures, nothing complicated, nothing demanding. And he glanced at her, inviting but not insisting, and she hesitated, then slowly walked closer, her steps unsure, her hands slightly trembling, and she sat down a short distance away, watching him draw. And minutes passed in silence, but it wasn't heavy silence, it was calm, almost peaceful. And day after day, this quiet routine continued. He would come, he would draw, sometimes he would hum softly, sometimes he would just sit there, present, patient, never pushing her, never expecting anything in return. And slowly, very slowly, she began to respond, not with words, but with small actions, a closer step, a longer gaze, a tiny attempt to trace the lines he made, and each time, he would smile like it was the greatest achievement in the world, because to him, it was, and her mother watched all of this from a distance, her expression a mix of confusion and disbelief, because nothing like this had ever worked before, nothing so simple, nothing so quiet, and yet she refused to accept it, her pride holding her back, her belief in control stronger than her willingness to understand, and one afternoon, she finally approached them again, her voice colder this time, sharper. "This needs to stop," she said firmly, "you're crossing a line," and he looked up at her, still calm, still respectful. "I'm not doing anything wrong," he replied softly. "I'm just sitting with her," and that answer only seemed to irritate her more, because in her world, things were never that simple, everything had rules, boundaries, status, and she saw him as someone beneath those rules, someone who had no place near her daughter, and she pulled the girl away again, more forcefully this time, ignoring the way the child hesitated, ignoring the way her eyes lingered on the man sitting quietly on the curb, and days passed without that small routine, the silence returning, heavier than before, and the girl withdrew again, her small progress fading, her eyes losing that spark, and even her mother began to notice it, the difference, the absence of something she couldn't quite name, and one evening, as she sat alone in her office, surrounded by success, by power, by everything she had built, she realized something uncomfortable, something she had been avoiding, that despite all her wealth, all her influence, she had never truly reached her own child, and the thought unsettled her more than any failure ever had. And the next morning, when the garbage truck returned, she didn't stop her daughter from going outside, she watched instead, silently, as the small girl walked toward the man again, slower this time, more cautious, as if unsure if the moment would still exist, and when he saw her, he didn't rush, he didn't react with surprise, he simply smiled and picked up the stick again, drawing another simple shape on the ground, and she sat down, a little closer than before, her eyes focused, her breathing steady, and for a long moment, nothing happened, just quiet, just presence, just patience, and then, something incredible, something so small yet so powerful, happened. Her lips parted slightly, her voice barely more than a whisper, fragile, uncertain, but real. "Hi," she said, and the world seemed to stop in that instant, the air itself holding its breath, and the man's eyes softened, not with shock, but with gentle understanding, as if he had always believed this moment would come. And behind them, her mother stood frozen, her phone slipping from her hand, her eyes wide with disbelief, because after years of silence, after every failed attempt, every expensive solution, it was this simple moment, this quiet patience, this unexpected kindness that had finally reached her daughter, and tears filled her eyes, not just from joy, but from the realization of how much she had misunderstood, how much she had overlooked, and slowly, she walked toward them, her steps no longer sharp, no longer commanding, but hesitant, almost unsure, and when she reached them, she didn't speak immediately, she just looked at her daughter, really looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, she saw not a problem, not a condition, but a child, her child, and the man stood up, giving them space, his expression calm, humble, as if he had done nothing extraordinary, but in truth, he had done something no one else could. He had given patience, he had given acceptance, he had given time, and those things had been stronger than anything money could buy. And the mother finally spoke, her voice softer than it had ever been. "Thank you," she said quietly, and he nodded, a small, simple gesture, because for him, it had never been about recognition, it had never been about proving anything, it had only been about kindness, and as the days turned into weeks, the girl began to speak more, slowly, gently, her voice growing stronger with each word, and her mother changed too, her walls softening, her understanding deepening, and the distance between them slowly disappearing, and the man continued his work, his life unchanged on the outside, but forever connected to that small moment that had changed everything, and in the end, it wasn't power, or wealth, or influence that brought the miracle, it was patience, it was kindness, it was the quiet belief that even the deepest silence can be reached, not by force, but by simply being there, and sometimes, the most unbelievable things don't come from extraordinary power, but from the simplest human heart.